Over 2,000 years ago, the ancient Greeks built something so advanced it shouldn't have existed in their time. The Antikythera Mechanism, a mysterious bronze machine pulled from a shipwreck, contains gears, calculations, and engineering centuries ahead of its era. Was it a computer, or something even more unbelievable? Let's uncover the world's first known analog computer. The sea is quiet now, blue, endless, calm. But more than 2,000 years ago, beneath these same waters, something impossible fell into the dark. No explosion, no scream, just a ship breaking apart, and history sinking with it. For centuries, the ocean kept its secret. Until sponge divers, simple men with rough hands and heavy helmets, descended into the depths of a small Greek island called Antikythera. They expected nothing more than coral and stone. Instead, they found statues staring back at them from the sand. Bronze arms, marble faces, the remains of a forgotten world, and buried among the wreckage, a lump of corroded metal. At first glance, it looked like nothing, just a broken rock eaten away by salt and time. No shine, no beauty, no obvious value. It was tossed aside, but inside that lump, inside that quiet, unremarkable piece of wreckage, was a machine that should not exist. A machine with gears, a machine with calculations, a machine that tracked the heavens. A machine so advanced that when scientists finally understood what they were looking at, they were forced to rewrite history. Because this object was built more than 2,000 years ago, long before modern clocks, long before telescopes, long before the idea of a complex mechanical computation was supposed to exist. And yet, there it was, the Antikythera Mechanism, often called the world's first computer. But that name doesn't do it justice. This wasn't just a tool, it wasn't just a calendar. It was a window into a forgotten way of thinking, a way of understanding the universe that vanished almost completely from human memory. Who built it? Why was it made? And how did such knowledge disappear for over 1,000 years? Tonight, we're going to follow the trail of gears and shadows back into the ancient world, into shipwrecks, lost libraries, and minds that may have been far more advanced than we ever imagined. This is not just a story about a machine. This is a story about lost knowledge. And it begins with the people who built it. Who built it? The truth is, we don't know, not for certain. No name is engraved on the device, no signature, no dedication to a king or a god. Only fragments of bronze, cracked plates, and faint inscriptions. Letters carved so small they were nearly erased by time. But the clues are there, and when you follow them, they lead to one of the most brilliant and most mysterious eras in human history. Ancient Greece. Not the Greece of myths and marble temples, but the Greece of mathematicians, astronomers, and engineers. A world where people believed the universe could be understood through numbers, ratios, and careful observation. The Antikythera Mechanism was not built by accident. It was not improvised. It was the product of deep knowledge. Knowledge that required generations to develop. The gears alone tell the story. Over 30 bronze gears cut with astonishing precision. Teeth shaped carefully, designed to mesh perfectly. Some gears sit inside others. Some reverse direction. Some move faster, some slower. This isn't decoration, it's computation. To design something like this, the builder needed to understand planetary cycles, lunar phases, solar eclipses, mathematical ratios, mechanical engineering, and not in isolation, but as a unified system. This immediately narrows the field. Most ancient cultures observed the sky. Many tracked seasons and eclipses. But very few tried to model the universe mechanically. That idea, turning cosmic motion into moving gears, belongs to a very specific tradition: Greek mathematical astronomy. The inscriptions on the mechanism are written in ancient Greek. The language style points to around the 2nd century BCE. The calendar system matches Greek civic calendars used in specific regions, and the astronomical knowledge embedded in the gears aligns uncannily well with theories proposed by Greek scholars centuries earlier. This leads many historians to believe the mechanism was created in a Greek workshop, possibly on the island of Rhodes, a known center of astronomy and engineering at the time. Rhodes wasn't just a port, it was a crossroads of ideas. Mathematicians, philosophers, engineers, and astronomers passed through its schools. Knowledge from Babylon, Egypt, and Greece mixed here, refined and expanded. Some researchers believe the device may be connected, at least philosophically, to traditions stemming from legendary thinkers like Archimedes. Archimedes, the genius who reportedly built mechanical models of the heavens. A man said to have created devices that mimicked the motion of the sun, moon, and planets using gears and spheres. No surviving example of his machines exists, but ancient writers describe them. And when modern scientists examined the Antikythera mechanism, many felt a chill. Because this was exactly the kind of thing those writers had described. Not magic, not mythology, engineering. Still, it's unlikely this was the work of one person. The Antikythera mechanism feels like the product of a school, not a lone genius. A tradition passed down, refined, tested, improved. Which raises an uncomfortable question. If people in the ancient world could build something this complex, what else did they build? And why did it all disappear? The shipwreck itself offers a clue. The vessel carrying the mechanism was loaded with luxury goods, statues, glassware, jewelry. This wasn't a scientific expedition. It was cargo, valuable objects being transported, possibly to Rome. That suggests the mechanism was already rare and precious. Something commissioned, something worth protecting. Maybe it was owned by a wealthy patron. Maybe it belonged to a scholar. Maybe it was a teaching device meant to demonstrate the order of the cosmos to elite students. Or maybe it was something else entirely. Because one thing is clear, this machine did not belong in the shadows. It was meant to be used, which means the people who built it believed deeply that the universe followed rules. Rules that could be predicted, calculated, turned by hand. And that belief would shape everything that followed. In the next chapter, we'll examine the machine itself, the strange features, the impossible precision, the puzzles that still haunt modern scientists. Because once you look closely at the Antikythera mechanism, the mystery only deepens. The mystery. At first, no one understood what they were looking at. When the corroded fragments of the Antikythera mechanism were lifted from the sea and placed in a museum, they sat quietly for decades. Broken, green with oxidation, cracked into pieces that looked more like burnt stone than metal. There were no glowing gears, no moving parts, no obvious purpose, just fragments. And yet, something about them felt wrong. Because when researchers finally dared to clean the surface, just a little, they saw it. Teeth. Gear teeth. Perfectly shaped. Evenly spaced, cut with intention. That was the first shock. Ancient people were not supposed to make machines like this. Not like this. As the fragments were examined more closely, it became clear this was not a single gear, or even a handful. This was a system. Layers of gears, stacked and interlocked, once enclosed inside a wooden case about the size of a shoebox. Handles, dials, pointers. This was a device designed to be operated. But that only raised more questions, because the gears weren't random. They followed precise mathematical ratios that matched astronomical cycles. When scientists began reconstructing the gear trains, painstakingly, fragment by fragment, they realized something unsettling. The mechanism tracked the motion of the sun and the moon. Not symbolically, mechanically. Turn the handle once, and time moves forward. Days pass, months advance. The moon changes phase, waxing and waning as it would in the real sky. But it didn't stop there. The moon's motion wasn't smooth. It sped up and slowed down, exactly as it does in reality due to its elliptical orbit. That detail alone stunned researchers. To model that motion correctly, the builder had to understand that the moon does not move at a constant speed around the Earth. An insight that took centuries to fully formalize in later astronomy. And yet, here it was, built into bronze, hidden inside a box. Then came the eclipses. On the back of the device, scientists discovered spiral dials marked with symbols and tiny inscriptions. When decoded, they revealed something extraordinary: predictions of solar and lunar eclipses. Not vague prophecies, exact cycles. The mechanism could tell you when an eclipse would happen, what type it would be, and even where in the sky it would occur. This wasn't astrology. This was predictive science. And the deeper researchers looked, the stranger it became. Some gears didn't correspond to the sun or moon at all. Their ratios suggested something else, something more complex. Planets, Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, the wandering stars. Although the planetary display itself was missing or badly damaged, the mathematics were there. The gears hinted at a full mechanical model of the known universe, operating according to Greek cosmology, a cosmos of nested cycles, all turning together in silent harmony. The inscriptions only added to the mystery. Tiny Greek letters, some barely visible even under modern imaging, covered parts of the mechanism. They weren't decorative. They were instructions, labels, explanations, almost like a user manual. But the text was fragmented, incomplete. Sentences cut off mid-thought, words missing, swallowed by corrosion. Enough to tease understanding, not enough to give answers. One line seemed to describe the motion of Venus. Another referenced the Olympiad cycle, used to date ancient athletic games. Others mentioned months, calendars, and adjustments for irregular timekeeping. This wasn't just a scientific instrument, it was cultural. It connected the heavens to human life. Festivals, games, rituals, seasons. And yet, for all its complexity, something was missing. No other machine like it has ever been found, not before, not after, no workshops, no blueprints, no half-finished copies, just this one. Which raises a haunting question. Was this device unique, or was it simply the only survivor? Historians know that ancient texts describe similar machines, devices that modeled the cosmos, predicted celestial events, and used mechanical systems to explain the sky. But those machines are gone. Lost to fires, lost to wars, lost to neglect. Libraries burned, cities fell, knowledge scattered. And the Antikythera mechanism sank to the bottom of the sea, sealed away in darkness, untouched by history. Preserved not by care, but by accident. Even today, parts of the mechanism defy complete reconstruction. Some gear functions remain uncertain. Some inscriptions are too damaged to read. Some relationships between components are still debated. Every new scan, every new model, answers one question and raises two more. Why was such advanced knowledge concentrated in a single object? Why was it never replicated, improved, or widely adopted? And most disturbing of all, how close was ancient humanity to a technological path we never took? The Antikythera Mechanism doesn't just challenge what we know about ancient engineering. It challenges the story we tell ourselves about progress. Because if this existed 2,000 years ago, what else might have existed and been forgotten? In the next chapter, we'll ask the most dangerous question of all. Why was it made? Why every machine is built for a reason? Even the simplest tool answers a need: cutting, lifting, measuring, protecting. But the Antikythera mechanism is anything but simple. It is intricate, deliberate, almost poetic in its construction. So the question lingers like an echo in an empty hall. Why? Why would someone in the ancient world pour this much time, skill, and knowledge into a single device? Why reduce the movements of the heavens into bronze gears hidden inside a wooden box? The most straightforward answer is also the least dramatic: education. Many researchers believe the mechanism was designed as a teaching tool, a way to demonstrate the structure of the cosmos to students of astronomy and philosophy. In an age without screens, without animations, without printed diagrams, a mechanical model would have been a powerful way to explain abstract ideas. Turn the handle, watch the moon change, see eclipses approach. Understand time not as myth, but as motion. In this view, the Antikythera mechanism becomes a classroom in a box, a device meant to show how cycles repeat, how the universe follows patterns that can be studied and predicted. But this explanation leaves something unanswered. If it was merely educational, why make it so precise? Why account for irregular lunar motion? Why encode long eclipse cycles spanning decades? Why track multiple calendars and regional time systems? These are not the features of a simple demonstration model. They suggest something more serious: prediction. The mechanism doesn't just show how the sky works, it tells you what the sky will do. Eclipses, especially, were not minor events in the ancient world. They were feared, revered, interpreted as omens. Kings delayed battles. Cities prepared rituals. Entire populations looked to the heavens in dread or awe. To predict an eclipse was to claim authority over the unknown. Some scholars argue that the Antikythera mechanism was a tool of power, a way for elites, priests, or scholars to assert control over time itself. To say with confidence, "On this day the sun will darken." Not prophecy, calculation. In a world where the heavens were deeply tied to fate, that kind of knowledge was priceless. Then there is the calendar. The device tracked multiple timekeeping systems at once: lunar months, solar years, festival cycles, athletic games. Time, in the ancient world, was not universal. Different cities followed different calendars. Months drifted, years slipped out of alignment. The mechanism corrected for this chaos. It unified time. That alone hints at administrative or political use. A device that could align festivals, games, and civic events across regions would have been invaluable to a powerful patron. But even that may not be the full story. Because beneath all of this, education, prediction, organization, there is something deeper. A worldview. The Antikythera mechanism reflects a belief that the universe is ordered, that chaos is an illusion, that beneath the apparent randomness of the sky lies a system that can be understood, modeled, and even replicated. This belief sits at the heart of Greek philosophy. The idea that nature follows laws, that mathematics describes reality, that the cosmos is not ruled by whim but by reason. The mechanism is not just a machine, it is an argument that the universe is knowable. Some researchers suggest it may have been a philosophical statement as much as a practical tool, a physical expression of ideas taught in schools of thought that sought to reconcile human understanding with cosmic order. Others go further. They suggest the device may have been a luxury object, an intellectual marvel commissioned by a wealthy individual, something to be displayed, discussed, admired, a symbol of enlightenment and mastery over knowledge. In this theory, the Antikythera mechanism was the ancient equivalent of a supercomputer sitting in a private study. Not because it was needed, but because it could be built, a statement of what the human mind could achieve. But there is one more possibility, one that makes many historians uneasy. What if this was only one piece of a larger tradition? What if similar devices once existed, used for navigation, for long-term planning, for coordinating agriculture, religion, and statecraft? What if the Antikythera mechanism was not the peak of ancient technology, but a surviving fragment of something much bigger? Because when you look at the effort required to build it, it doesn't feel experimental. It feels refined, confident, as if the builders knew exactly what they were doing, which suggests practice, and practice implies repetition. So why didn't this technology spread? Why didn't it transform the ancient world? The answer may be as simple and as tragic as history itself. Wars, collapsing empires, libraries burned, workshops destroyed, knowledge reduced to ash. The Antikythera mechanism may represent a path not taken, a moment when humanity stood at the edge of a mechanical understanding of the universe and then stepped back, or was pushed back. In the next chapter, we'll explore what the mechanism still hides, the details that don't fit, the controversial theories, the clues that suggest there may be more beneath the surface. Because the deeper we look, the stranger it gets. Hidden secrets. For decades, the Antikythera mechanism refused to give up its secrets. Every time researchers thought they understood it, something new emerged from the corrosion. Something that didn't quite fit. The first surprise came not from the gears, but from the writing. The inscriptions on the mechanism were not large or ceremonial. They weren't meant to impress. They were tiny, dense, technical, carved with such care that even today, some letters can only be read using advanced imaging. Why write so small? Some researchers believe the inscriptions weren't meant for casual viewers at all. They were meant for someone who already understood the device, someone trained, someone initiated, almost like notes written by an engineer to another engineer. And the more of these inscriptions were decoded, the stranger the picture became. They didn't just describe what the dials showed, they explained why. Certain phrases hinted at correction factors, adjustments, assumptions about celestial motion. This suggests the builders were not simply copying tradition, they were actively refining it. That alone challenges the idea that ancient science was static. But then came the imaging. In the early 21st century, researchers used powerful scanning techniques, X-ray tomography, surface mapping, to peer inside the fragments without damaging them. And inside they found more gears. Gears that were never visible before. Some of these gears were incredibly thin, stacked in tight spaces where no one expected complexity. Others formed ratios so specific that they matched astronomical cycles known today, but thought to be far beyond ancient calculation. One set of gears appears to encode the Metonic cycle, a 19-year period that aligns lunar months with solar years. Another aligns with the Saros cycle, used to predict eclipses over an 18-year span. But buried even deeper is something more controversial. A longer cycle, one that stretches across generations. This suggests the builders were thinking far beyond a single human lifetime. They were designing a machine meant to remain accurate long after its creator was gone. That raises an unsettling question. Who was meant to use it? And for how long? Then there's the casing. Most reconstructions show the mechanism housed in a wooden box with doors that open to reveal the dials. On those doors were likely even more inscriptions, explanations, instructions, warnings. But the wood is gone. rotten away by centuries underwater. What knowledge vanished with it? Some researchers believe the missing text may have included philosophical or cosmological explanations, bridging mathematics with belief. Others suggest it could have contained calibration instructions, allowing the device to be updated as observations improved. If true, that would mean the Antikythera mechanism was not fixed knowledge, but evolving knowledge. Then there are the planetary indicators. While the Sun and Moon functions are fairly well understood, the planetary system remains incomplete. Some scholars argue the mechanism once displayed the motion of all 5 visible planets, using complex gear systems that mimicked retrograde motion, the strange backward loops planets appear to make in the sky. To model that mechanically is astonishing. It requires layered cycles and precise ratios that even medieval astronomers struggled to perfect. If the Antikythera mechanism truly did this, it wasn't just ahead of its time, it was out of time. This has led to fringe but persistent theories. Some suggest the mechanism is evidence of a lost technological tradition, one that reached levels of mechanical sophistication far earlier than history allows. Others point to the gap. After the Antikythera mechanism, nothing like it appears again for over 1,000 years. No gradual improvement, no simplified versions, no clear descendants. It's as if the knowledge was extinguished. Not forgotten slowly, but cut off. Some even speculate that devices like this were deliberately restricted, that they belonged to secretive intellectual circles, that the knowledge of building them was guarded, not shared. Not because it was dangerous, but because it was powerful. And then there's the shipwreck itself. The Antikythera wreck has never been fully excavated. Modern dives have recovered coins, jewelry, fragments of statues, but much of the site remains unexplored. Some researchers quietly wonder, was the mechanism alone, or was it one of many? Could more fragments still lie buried beneath the sand? Devices broken beyond recognition? Knowledge still waiting in silence? Every unanswered question adds weight to the mystery. The Antikythera mechanism feels less like an anomaly and more like a survivor. A message in a bottle from a world that understood something we no longer do. In the next chapter, we'll hear from the voices trying to make sense of it all. The experts who study the fragments, the scholars who argue late into the night, the disagreements that show just how fragile our understanding really is. Because even now, the Antikythera mechanism refuses to settle into a single explanation. Expert views. When experts talk about the Antikythera mechanism, their voices change. Even seasoned archaeologists, people who have handled relics from every corner of the ancient world, tend to pause before describing it. Not because they lack words, but because they're choosing them carefully. Many archaeologists believe the mechanism represents the highest known level of mechanical engineering from antiquity. In this view, it is not an accident or an outlier, but the clearest surviving example of a sophisticated scientific tradition. They argue that ancient Greek astronomy was far more advanced than popular history suggests, and that written records alone failed to preserve that reality. The mechanism, to them, is physical proof that theory was not only discussed, but built. Some researchers argue that the Antikythera mechanism should not be thought of as a computer at all. They say that label is misleading, imposed by modern minds trying to make sense of something ancient. Instead, they describe it as a cosmic simulator, a device designed to mirror the structure of the universe as it was understood at the time. Not to calculate abstract numbers, but to embody celestial order in physical form. Others disagree. They point out that the mechanism performs step-by-step calculations using fixed ratios, input and output. Turn the handle and the result appears. In their eyes, this is computation, mechanical computation, regardless of era, and that realization forces a difficult conclusion. If the Antikythera mechanism truly performs calculations, then the concept of computing did not begin in the modern age. It was discovered, forgotten, and rediscovered. There are also debates about who had access to such knowledge. Some scholars believe devices like this were extremely rare, built only for elite patrons or royal courts. In this view, the mechanism represents concentrated expertise, knowledge held by a small intellectual class, never meant for widespread use. Others suggest the opposite. They argue that the mechanism may have been part of a broader educational culture, used in philosophical schools or observatories. That similar devices may once have existed in workshops across the Mediterranean. Simpler, perhaps, but now lost. And then there are the skeptics. Some experts caution against romanticizing the device. They warn that while it is extraordinary, it should not be used to rewrite all of ancient history. They argue that its uniqueness may reflect a rare convergence of talent, resources, and circumstance. Nothing more. Yet even these skeptics admit one thing. Nothing like it should exist, and yet it does. Perhaps the most contentious debate centers on continuity. Why did this knowledge disappear? Some argue there was no sudden loss, just a gradual shift. As empires changed, priorities moved away from mechanical science toward philosophy, theology, and rhetoric. Complex machines fell out of favor. Others disagree sharply. They point to destruction. Libraries burned, cities sacked, scholars killed or scattered. They argue that entire schools of thought may have vanished in a few violent moments, taking generations of knowledge with them. And then there are those who simply say, "We don't know. The evidence is incomplete. The fragments are damaged. The story is broken," which may be the most honest answer of all. Conclusion. The Antikythera mechanism does not shout, it whispers, from the bottom of the sea, from corroded bronze, from gears that once turned beneath ancient fingers. It tells us that the past is not as simple as we like to believe, that progress is not a straight line, that knowledge can rise and fall, that brilliance can exist, be forgotten, and leave almost no trace behind. Somewhere, more than 2,000 years ago, a group of people looked at the sky and believed they could understand it, not through myth alone, but through reason, mathematics, and craftsmanship. They believed the universe could be held in a box, and for a time, it was. Then the ship sank, the gears froze, the world moved on. Centuries passed. Empires rose and fell, religions spread. Machines evolved along different paths, and the Antikythera mechanism slept. Until one day it returned, not as a complete object, but as a question that still has no final answer. Were the ancients closer to modern science than we ever imagined? Was this a lone miracle, or a surviving fragment of a lost tradition? How much knowledge has humanity truly lost? The mechanism does not answer these questions. It simply exists, silent, complex, defiant, a reminder that history is not finished revealing itself, and that sometimes the most important discoveries are not found by looking forward, but by listening carefully to the past,